I don't know specifically if I can recall an MVP race that's been this crazy. Brock went into that one as a fairly clear favorite, around -2 to 300 in that vicinity. Now he's anywhere from 5-1 to 10-1. Lamar Jackson is the fave, around -150. CMC now about 3-1. What are your thoughts on this MVP race? And when the dust is settled, who would your money be on?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for bettors out there, you really need to separate what you think is going to happen and get your mindset set as you are a voter, right? Remember, for instance, that a lot of these voters aren't necessarily gamblers. So maybe they saw a tweet on Twitter where Brock Purdy's odds shifted, but they're not like necessarily following these odds moves every day like we are. Remember too that when these folks vote, they're now, unlike years past, they're now voting on a 1 through 5 for their MVP ballot. So keep those things in mind and put yourself from the perspective of one of those, I believe there's 50 of them, one of those 50 MVP voters, and what you think they're going to do. Kind of like the NFL draft, when that rolls around and there's the props, like, is Bryce Young going to go number 1? That sort of stuff. It's like, you may think that this quarterback is better than this quarterback, and you may think this is what should happen if you were a GM, but what is that GM for the Panthers going to do in that situation? It's really important to keep that in mind. But Purdy now at 7-1, 8-1. It's interesting value. I've got an 18-1 ticket on Purdy, so I'm of course keeping my fingers crossed for that one. But I'm not buying any more of the 8-1, 7-1 at this point. Because if I was a voter, my 49er bias aside, I'd vote for Purdy. But I think that these voters might overreact to this Monday night game because it was billed as MVP versus MVP and he flopped.
So he did, for sure. A lot of people sticking with those 4 picks, but let's not forget here, a guy by the name of Joe Montana, his career high in a game for interceptions was 4 as well. So take it with a grain of salt, but you're right. Voters will look at that, but there's also a good opportunity that, the Ravens have a tough game coming up. Maybe Lamar lays an egg, and Brock plays Washington, and I'll get to more of that in my picks at the bottom of the show here, but he could have another box score, insane box score game coming up against this very bad Washington team.